This week on the Art of SBA Lending.
People sense when you have a passion for what you do, and I think all of us have a passion, and that's why they picked us.
You all were looking downfield with the same purpose, the same objective, the same idea. That's part of what we're missing in today's environment.
John said a marketing machine. It's true, because whatever you wanted to develop business in your market, I don't ever remember being denied.
After 2 weeks, you came out of there and you were fluent not only in SBA, but you were fluent in Money Store.
I once had a boss that told me, if you bring me a problem, you better bring me a solution. Well, the problem is that taking titled vehicles as collateral can be very cumbersome. And the solution is CorpSmart. When you have a loan involving titled vehicles, CorpSmart is there to handle everything, from transferring the registration to taking title to making sure that the sales tax is paid. I've got to be honest, I didn't even realize sales tax was a thing until just a few years ago when my borrower called me from the closing table because he got hit with a $50,000 bill at closing that I didn't account for in my structure. And so in the spirit of solutions, CorpSmart has an offer just for Art of SBA listeners. Now you can quickly and easily request a DMV quote directly from the CorpSmart website so that you can accurately account for all of your closing costs and properly structure your loans up front. Just go to corp-smart.com/Art of SBA. We'll leave a link down below.
We've recorded hundreds of hours of SBA content and had dozens and dozens of guests. There's one shop that continues to be said and mentioned over and over again, and that is the Money Store. The Money Store changed the trajectory of SBA lending forever. And today, Money Store alumni run many of the divisions we all know and love. Known for their innovative marketing and early adoption of the BDO model, the Money Store stood at the top spot for 16 years in a row. And today, we're talking to 4 alumni in a very special Money Store reunion episode of the Art of SBA Lending. This is going to be an episode unlike any other we've done before. I've never been this excited in my life. We, of course, have some surprises in store, including some that these guys don't even know about. But without further ado, let's bring in some of our Money Store alumni. John Handmaker, Vince Calicchia, Joe Weiner, and Sam Renta. Fellas, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you,
You
Ray.
bet. Thanks
Great
for
to
having
be here.
us,
Thank
Ray.
you, Ray, for the
Yeah,
invitation.
absolutely, yes.
All right, well, let's get into it. So this whole thing came about because Joe sent Vince that video. Let's pop it up, Madison.
But that was that. Here it is. This is the one.
So who are these people? Are these actual employees of the Money Store?
That's the CEO right there.
Yeah, there's
Most of the
Lily
people in the
Akal.
video.
Larry Wodarski right there. Mark Turtletaub. Larry Wodarski.
And everyone was on board with this.
There's Aaron Beckman.
Yeah, most of the people in the video were in leadership or management positions at the company. From the sales to the originations to
Madison, can you
construction
make
to
it lower?
finance to legal. Yeah.
Just keep it playing low while we talk about it. Go ahead.
The wave.
What's your guys' favorite line from the video?
Oh, mad to make loans. That's it. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What is it? What does it mean to make a young broker squeal? What is?
I think they
Hopefully
took
that's
a
a good
lot of
thing.
liberty. I think they took a lot of
we do?
liberty with the vernacular and what they used to make it rhyme and flow with the original song. But
That was Rick Combs, wasn't it? No? Was that Rick Combs?
Lisa Forrest.
There's Ken Garfield.
We need to sit down. I need to know who all these people are. But we're gonna go ahead and put that up, and we'll share it maybe from Vince's page. But we got to get that out there. You can watch it in your spare time. But man, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Well, it was funny being out there when it happened, when they came on. We were all out in the audience, and you guys, I'm sure, remember this. And it was kind of, you're thinking it's going to be something serious, right? And then all of a sudden, these guys come
Yeah.
out, and it's like, is it a rock band or is it our guys? You know?
Well, and if you recall, I mean, what was so crazy about it, this was all, they had everybody together at the national meeting and out in
Yeah.
Sacramento. And we did this at the Red, if I'm not mistaken, we did it at the Red Lion. And how it started, we're all sitting down and all of a sudden you hear this motorcycle. And literally it was this, a for real motorcycle. And Paul Liliakoff, who at the time was the president of the money store, comes in on the motorcycle. And he's a motorcycle race car driver anyway. And he raced his motorcycles, and he comes in and in the Red Lion, and that's how they approach it. And then all of a sudden, they turn on the music and they show the video, and it was just unbelievable. And that's the way that Money Store used to roll.
Let me ask
we're
you,
pretty
John.
excited
Hold
about
on.
that.
Let me correct that, because I think I'm pretty sure we're conflating a couple of things here. I think
I
that
may
was
be.
at a national. No, that's okay. That was at a national meeting, and I remember we were all out there and waiting for them to come up. But what you're referring to, I'm pretty sure, was my orientation week at the Money Store in 1993, and at the headquarters, as you said. And they came into the entrance, the front entrance, on the motorcycle. So Paul Liliakoff, Larry Wodarski, whoever else was involved, came in on Harleys, and that was to the tune of the Gazelle, the Lion deal.
The Lion Sleeps Tonight.
And the Lion Sleeps Tonight. That's it right there. That's the
Wow,
one,
what a
that was
memory.
on that
Wow.
one. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, sure was. Do you remember that?
You may be right, and they may have done it twice, but I certainly, I mean, you're right. I
Yeah.
may be conflating the two, but
No,
let's put it this way. Regardless, it was,
It
Ray, that was part of it. Everything was sensationalized, and everything was
Yeah.
from a marketing and kind of a promotion perspective. It was totally overdone and over the top. And,
Yeah.
it was very clear that the leadership took the business seriously, but didn't take themselves real seriously. They had a lot of
That's
fun.
right. Yeah,
Man,
absolutely.
that sounds like my kind of vibe. I love that.
Yeah.
And that gives you an idea a little bit about the Money Store's vibe at the time for those, who weren't around to kind of see it in action. I'm going to just jump right into it and kind of let's start
Sure.
getting that backstory from you guys. Who was the Money Store and how did they become a prominent SBA lender? Joe, I'm going to go to you with this one.
Well, you got to remember where they started. Well, you don't remember. I'm going to tell you. Basically, it started in New Jersey. In Union, New Jersey in 1967, they were doing home equity loans. And then subsequently, they were doing them in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, as I recall. And in 1972, they trademarked the name, the Money Store. And then from there, they got a couple of baseball noted players, Phil Rizzuto, and the theme song back then was Phil Rizzuto for the Money Store. And you saw him on television all through the New York tri-state area. And then when time went on, they replaced him with a fellow by the name of Jim Palmer, another major baseball player. And they were doing some revamping and some consolidation. Alan Turtletaub was succeeded by his son, Mark Turtletaub, in 1991, and that's when the company went public. 1997 was listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and they moved the headquarters from New Jersey to Sacramento, California, where it resided until most people either stayed through it or left. But then, what was it, 1998, fellas? 1998, it got sold to First Union, right?
99.
99, got sold to First Union in Charlotte for about $2.1 billion, as I recall. And it just continued from there. I left the Money Store in 2001, but then it was purchased. First Union merged with Wachovia, right, John? Merged with Wachovia, and that's basically where I left.
Yeah, it was interesting because Ray, back one of the things is that when many of us joined the Money Store, it was funny because most of the people who had ever heard of the Money Store had heard of them because of either Rizzuto or Palmer, and their advertising was 1-800-LOAN-YES. So
Yeah,
call the
that's
Money
right.
Store,
Yeah.
1-800-LOAN-YES.
That's right.
And at the time that I joined, and I can't remember again, it's been 30, 40 years ago and my memory's not as good as it used to be. But at the time that I joined, the Money Store had already become, by 1994, the #1 SBA lender in the country. Further, they were also as Joe alluded, they were a really big home equity, subprime home equity lender. They were also in the subprime auto lending space and student lending space. So they had all these niche finance, different segments that they were focused on. And it was actually Mark Turtletaub, who he went to school out west. He went to school at Berkeley. I don't know if he got his MBA or not, but he was a West Coaster. And I think it was clearly Mark who brought SBA lending as another a line of business to the money store, to the family. So, as they had done, they didn't just get into the business, they got into it and they tried to dominate the business, and they did for years.
Right.
And boy, did they.
I got a funny story on how I got to the money store. It involves John. So here I was a happy community banker. And my next door neighbor was the CEO of the bank. I was supposed to be a community banker my entire life. Okay. And, I'm 6 years into it and I'm just a young banker. And all of a sudden I get a call from a recruiter. And well, I was, flattered. Who's calling me to hire me, right? And so I get a call from a recruiter and he says, hey, there's this job for an SBA lender out there and they're interested in talking to you. And I'm like, oh, what the heck? I'll just go and check it out. And so I go through the interview and it sounds pretty intriguing, but I'm kind of like, the money store, it's kind of a weird name. And why would I go work for there when I'm perfectly happy over there? And so, but I could keep courting. I go through this whole process and then eventually I'm getting to the point where it's 50-50 decision. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the idea of, marketing myself. The compensation side was dramatically different. And so, and they were really good at recruiting. And so what they would do is they would just introduce you to different people in the organization that were doing really well. So one day, the hiring manager says, hey, I want you to talk to this guy named John Handmaker. He's doing really well. And this is the day of my Christmas party. Like I pick my wife up and we're on the way and we're driving. It's like a 30-40 minute ride. The whole time John's talking my ear off about how great the money store is.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. And by the end of that phone call, I'm walking out and I'm going into the restaurant to meet all my coworkers. I'm thinking, I think I'm going to leave the company and go work for the money store. And they flew me out to Sacramento and I got to meet the staff and I was like blown over by just the whole marketing approach. I mean, it was just like, they were like, we have a marketing package. We're going to promote you. And I'm like, this is really cool because banking in the 90s, they weren't about promoting in that way. And this was a whole new way of kind of approaching lending. So thank you, John, for taking me into a different direction in my career. Appreciate that.
Well, you don't have to thank me. I got to tell you, I appreciate it. I mean, I joined them in 94 and by far, even to this day of companies that I've started and been involved in, the best company I've ever been part of, without question.
John, you may not remember this, but you and I did boot camp together.
I do. And I was just going to say, I mean, that was a remarkable, Ray, I don't think companies do this anymore, but one of the coolest things about Money Store, and I think this just speaks so much to who they were, is that they were great at recruiting. And I don't remember what number BDO that I joined in 94, but at the end of the day, by the time we got to maybe 96, 97, we had 110 BDOs throughout the country. We had, franchise focused BDOs. We had national BDOs. It was really kind of a remarkable organization because they really put a tremendous amount of effort behind recruiting and training the sales team. They had a huge marketing team. So what they used to do is when you would join the company, your onboarding, we called it BDO boot camp. And back in the day, they had this really cool office down in an area called the Cannery, which is kind of like this old warehouse area of Sacramento. And they would fly you out there and you would spend 2 weeks with peers. And Joe and I were in BDO boot camp. And it was like, you would learn everything there is to know about SBA lending and about the company and cash flow analysis and sales and all that during the day. And then at night there would be activities and socialize. So you really got to know a lot of the people within the company and you were entrenched. And if after 2 years, after 2 weeks, you came out of there and you were fluent, not only in SBA, but you were fluent in Money Store.
Yeah, I actually started in 93. So in the August of 93 is when I started. And I remember, I think the guy's name was Bill Miller, if I remember right, and Dagmar, who did the marketing stuff. And I remember they came in, and as to the marketing side of this, they came in with this 3-ring binder, basically. I mean, it was, the big, thick 3-ring binders, and it had, the tombstones and the flyers and all the PR stuff that you could put together. And I swear to God, I think there was almost once we got out of that and you got into your market and they allowed us to start, doing what we do, right? it was almost an unlimited budget. I really at that time don't recall. John said a marketing machine. It's true, because whatever you wanted to develop business in your market, I don't ever remember being denied, ever. And I'm talking about not
Right.
small dollars either.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
If you've been a fan of the show for a while, then you know one of my favorite companies to work with is Rapid Business Plans. Last year alone, their business plans helped facilitate over $600 million in government guaranteed lending. They're on track to beat that this year. More and more small business lenders and their borrowers are relying on Rapid to help with the business plan, projections, and assumptions, because their team goes the extra mile to ensure everything is done fast and done right. And that helps streamline the process. They're great at export business plans, by the way, which are critically important at protecting that 90% guarantee. Rapid also offers feasibility studies, which tells you if the project is, well, feasible. I would recommend these for any large startup loan because it protects you and it protects the borrower and helps you get more good deals done. Go to rapidbusinessplans.com to set up your Get Acquainted call today. Find out why so many top producing BDOs recommend Rapid to their small business borrowers. We're going to leave a link in the show notes just for our Art of SBA listeners. Now let's get back to the show.
Did they pioneer the BDO model at this time?
Yes.
I'm assuming they did. I had never heard of that before. So yeah.
Yeah, and
I
I
would
think
think
they
so.
did, Ray. It was interesting, and I don't know about the rest of Vince and Joe and Sam. I don't know whether when you all joined, Sam, I'm sure you joined before me. So I think that, and Joe, you and I joined at the same time. Basically, there were two compensation models, okay? It was a BDO, and you either had, I think at the time, a salary of, let's say, 28,000 or a salary
Yeah,
of 32,000.
nothing.
That was it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
based upon those options, you had a different scale as far as what your commissions would be.
Interesting.
And,
That's exactly
for
right.
many of us were in traditional banking, that wasn't that much of a step back anyway. So
Right,
since
right.
banks don't pay that well, but all of a sudden, if you can get into an industry where you can make unlimited income and make commissions on financial sales by being consultative and going out and showing borrowers how you can enhance their cash flow and offer them a product that is not available, it was pretty enticing and pretty intriguing.
Yes.
At the time, though, it was for many of us, and I'll just say this, and I think, Ray, you talk about pioneering. I truly believe, Mark was a genius, and Mark was a visionary.
Yeah.
What a great guy, and what a great guy to lead the company. And so, as far as the SBA division goes, Mark, I'll give him credit where credit's due. He really, along with a lot of the leadership and the team, and really all of us, really helped drive that. But it was Mark's vision, and it was one of these amazing things where he really had also taken what's available in the SBA, within the SBA SOPs, and almost created, some of the verticals and the channels that we're seeing today. So it was Mark who kind of came up with the idea of doing really high leverage, long-term loans for owner-occupied real estate and marketing that. It was complementary to what they did on the resi side. They came up with some conventional products as well. So, you want to talk about a guy who is all about let's go impact the market and do it in a huge way. That's what made it so big and so great. And they got everybody involved. They recruited the right people, not just on the sales side, but also throughout the company who were equally passionate about it. So you had this organization of a lot of really young, energetic people that were focused on, they knew something was hot and something was good. And they just got everybody behind it with a tremendous amount of financial wherewithal, marketing power, and energy. And 16 years in a row, we were the number one SBA lender in the country.
Ray, some of
Yeah.
the things that we were doing too, marketing wise, that weren't being done before. So we had a program where banks would always put financing provided by. We would have a signed program where financing available.
That's
so we
right.
would market to
Yeah.
the commercial real estate brokers and say,
That's right.
hey, look, we want to build a relationship with your firm and get referrals. So can we put a sign next to your sign with our phone number? And if we get leads, we'll send them to you. And it was about
that's exactly
building that
right.
relationship. And then with the tombstone postcards, that thing was immensely popular. Of course, this is all pre-internet, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing that we did too is if you go to a commercial real estate broker association now, there's probably 10,000 bankers there. But back in the 90s, we were the only people there.
That's
We
right.
we started the idea of going to commercial real estate brokers luncheons and meeting them. And then all of a sudden, everybody copied us. And now when you go there, there's 5% commercial real estate brokers, 95% vendors. So it's changed a lot, and it's not as effective as it used to be.
it was so interesting. Like, for example, Ray, many of us, I mean, I remember going and being very involved in the CCIM organization before, to your point, Vince, before anybody was. And so,
Right.
yeah, there were bankers and yeah, there were a few here and there, but it was not nearly what it was today. And, what ended up happening was, as a result of that, it was all about focusing exclusively on the real estate side. Yes, we were doing change of ownership and other use of proceeds, but we were primarily an owner-occupied real estate lender back then. And the goal was to go really, really broad and deep. And just to emphasize this, I mean, not only do we do signage, we had proposed financing scenarios, the tombstone mailers. I mean, I pulled out my hat. I bring that out to show you. I mean, it was the swag that we had. I mean, we were dropping, and it was drip marketing and guerrilla marketing everywhere, and
Right.
it was just a remarkable organization that was completely committed to nationwide getting their money out, and so getting their name out, such that when you heard the letters SBA, you associated with the money store. That was the number one objective. And they did a phenomenal job of it.
There was so much emphasis on real estate because business acquisitions was coming into its own. For the first 15 years of my career, I didn't do anything but real estate. Between signs and co-branded marketing people, everything that John said, the company was fully behind it and getting the name out about who the money store was and telling the brokerage community, whether it's CCIM or whoever it was, that we're behind them. As a matter of fact, I'm a CCIM. And one of the great things about that organization is they listen. They do listen to things that can help them generate more revenue. And I would tell anybody listening to this podcast, if you want to get into the heart of the real estate space in your market, go join up to the CCIM chapter in your market. It is the place to be, aside from other groups, but that's where the movers and shakers in the real estate side.
Not only that, in terms of, I mean, we got the word out. We pushed hard in terms of the marketing and all those things, but I think all you guys would agree, the back rooms, I mean, our underwriting was get the deal done. Our closing department was get it closed. It was not, I like to use the term today that every piece of paper is not weighted the same. And I don't think sometimes people understand that every piece of paper is not weighted the same. And in the day, they understood that. This thing may not be necessary to close. We can get it later. And I'm not saying, you undercut stuff that should be done, but there was a mentality of, let's get these deals in, let's gather as many as we can, and let's get them closed as quickly as we can. And everybody was on board with that. Everybody.
And it sounds like these were certainly the good old days of SBA BDOing. Did you guys know that those were the good old days at the time?
We just knew those are the days that we lived in. We would come to find out those were the good old days as we progress forward in our careers.
It's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, and retrospection is a wonderful thing. I think that, Ray, I'll say it a little bit differently. I don't know about the rest of you all, but, coming from a traditional banking environment and going into the SBA division and money store and being equipped with all these tools, I got to tell you, for some of us, especially in the Midwest and maybe even on the, especially primarily Midwest, SBA lending was not as prominent and well known as it was in some other markets. So it was very, very difficult, at least initially, just to educate the market as to what SBA lending was. What ended up happening was, I think we realized, at least I can say this, I think I realized it was the good old days when finally, after a couple of years, started to have a little bit of success and all your competition started coming after you. And all of a sudden you started seeing other lenders, the Hellers, the CITs, AT&T, they were opening up and they were adding BDOs to the market. And, it became, a lot more pricing and structuring pressures from, what you were seeing. So I think it really wasn't until I saw that I realized that it was really the good old days. And as things began to change because of either, growth of the SBA, the market, or just macroeconomic factors. But yeah, it was certainly a remarkable time.
It was.
I think you're exactly right. The funny thing is, the week that I started, I had called some folks because I wasn't sure when I took the job, and the week that I started, there was nobody in this market in Birmingham that I knew of that was regarding SBA. Maybe some 504 lenders, but especially not the 7A stuff. And so it was like there was nobody else out here in the market at that time that we could you could almost kind of carte blanche on
Wait a minute,
the
guys.
show.
Hold on. We got We got a drop in here. We got a drop in. Who is
Oh.
this?
Oh my gosh, who
Oh.
are these old
Oh, my
guys?
word.
Oh,
Hey,
hey, Raff.
Mark. How you
Young and
doing?
vibrant.
Hey,
Look at this
Rattfield,
guy.
are you going to send that package through, or are you going to hold it back for me?
Yeah, I was just going to say, man, I tell you what, Ray, of all people to bring on the guy that basically was the gatekeeper, man.
It's funny.
The
It's
screening
funny,
memo,
Ray.
the deadly screening memo.
He was the gatekeeper, and you couldn't get a deal past him. But as soon as he became a BDO, you know how his life changed, right? I mean, he just had to send everything through.
And then Ken Okamura took over, if I'm not mistaken, and he became the gatekeeper, right?
I swear I
So-
put
You know
everything in
what?
the FedEx package. It's in there, I promise.
Oh, that's funny. Oh,
Oh,
So-
hey Ray.
Yes.
When I started out, oh my gosh, little story, okay? When I started out, well, this is 30 years ago in April. Holy cow, 1995. I got hired as an underwriter at the money store and didn't know anything about SBA lending, learned from ground up. And these guys here, they're all pretty much living legend in SBA because they were the money store BDOs, top dogs, right? And I remember I was underwriter and dealt with most of these guys. I think, John, weren't you a manager of a Midwest team initially?
I was.
Right,
Yeah.
if I recall. But well, look at these old guys who look still vibrant. I think I chose right career path because look at them. I mean, geez, when I joined, they're old, right? And look at them, they're older, but still, I mean, kicking like spring chickens. Amazing. So when I joined as underwriter, I had to learn from scratch, and I got deals from all these guys, and I did pretty well. I was lucky enough to do pretty well. Then I was in underwriting for 4 years. Then what happened was Margaret Olmsted. You guys remember Margaret Olmsted?
course.
She was
Uh-huh.
construction
Oh, yeah.
equipment manager
Yeah.
and became the top person within the organization. She was seeing me working on Saturdays, every Saturday, working on Saturday by myself at the C Street office, and I was working. And what she didn't know was my wife didn't drive at the time. She had a traumatic experience as a high schooler. Her car crashed, on her prom night. So she couldn't drive, into her late 30s. Start driving. So I had to be her driver. And what Margaret didn't know was that she was working at the money store's home equity division on Saturdays. And of course, I was driving her to work on Saturday morning. And I didn't want to go back home and be myself. So I used to work on Saturdays. And Margaret thought that I was the hardest working person ever because she was seeing me Saturday mornings every day, right? And she approached me after 2 years. She goes, "Hey, Mark, I've been observing you for the last 2 years, and you're amazingly productive underwriter." Duh. I work 6 days a week, and whereas my fellow underwriters work 5 days a week. Of course I was productive. And she goes, "Are you interested in management?" And I said, "Well, I haven't thought about it. I like underwriting for 2 years already, and I like it." It's like, "Well, I tell you what, I like your work ethic, and I think you can make a difference for the company. Why don't you think about creating a department that would increase productivity and efficiency of the underwriting department?" And I thought about it. It was like, do I want to go into management? Really? It's like, okay. So I came up with this idea of loan screening department. Because at the time, the money store was
Boy,
the number
did
one
you.
SBA lender in the country. We did 600 apps a month, right? From 100 BDOs, right? So the issue as an underwriter was that I'll get a package. Half the time it was incomplete, missing crucial information, or 10% of the time was even SBA ineligible. It was a waste of my time. And I was stacked 5, 6 deals at a time, and half them were incomplete or ineligible, right? And I thought about it. How can we increase productivity? Okay, I've created a minimum submission checklist, created a loan screening department, and approached burnout underwriters who were tired of underwriting, right? Who knew the guidelines, who knew complete package. So I hired 4 of them, and we had our first loan screening department. And I started creating this weekly report on, John Handmaker. He has 95% submission approval, complete package rate. But Sam was always the worst. I'm just kidding. No.
No, I knew that was
So
coming.
so what that created was a target on my back. I was the mean guy, who would tell the BDO that incomplete, I'm not going to sign it, ineligible. But in retrospect, that was the best training ever. For 2 years, I looked at probably 12,000 applications, right? And in half an hour, I went through the package and determined completeness and eligibility. Then one day in 1999, after 4 years, it was my lucky day. I was working as a manager making 55 grand a year. a BDO named Paul Finnegan. I hope he's somewhere out there still.
Paul's still
Watching
around, but he's
Paul Finnegan.
he's got some health issues. But yeah, Paul's around.
He has.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah.
Is he still in Portland area? If I recall.
He's still in Charlotte. He is. His son's actually
Oh.
in the business now too.
Yep.
So he sure is.
Oh,
Paul,
one day
Paul
I need to reach
actually,
out to him. Yeah, I need to thank him because Paul Finnegan changed my life. Because one day I was looking at a loan package from Paul Finnegan. He had resigned as a BDO at the money store the year prior, and he came to the money store to buy a pizzeria franchise in Portland, Oregon. Of course, I was looking at his package and saw his personal tax return and saw his W-2 for the very last year he left as a BDO, right? And I was thinking, holy shit. He's making 5 times more than I was making as a manager of a department. And I saw his W-2 and I said, okay, I'm going home and talk to my wife. No matter what, I'm going to become a BDO.
Oh man.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great,
Mark.
That's what happened.
That's
Mark,
great.
that is great.
Now was the NorCal sales manager to hire me as a BDO in mid-99. And this is my 26 years at the BDO, and I'm approaching $1 billion in funding, guys.
It's awesome.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You, Sam.
That's fantastic.
A lot easier with the $5 million
story.
limit, though, I will say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah, it's a lot easier. Exactly.
That's true.
Back then, it was what? Was it million or 2 million back then?
It
you
was
know,
2
Ray,
million.
you raise an interesting comment about that, and we talk about it often. And you know, I can't recall exactly when the maximum loan size was increased from 750 to $1.5 million, but many of us were, you know, let me say it a different way. Achieving President's Club level status back in the 90s at Money Store with limited loan sizes was incredibly difficult. It was so hard.
That's right.
And so what I'll say
15
is
million
that
was a huge number.
you look at guys like, I mean, I'll just give him credit where credit. You look at a guy like Mike Duckham, who was doing a stupid amount of franchise lending. I mean, he was crushing it.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
And,
that's
you know,
right.
regardless, it just, you look at it back then and it was, you know, to be able to go do north of $15 million in that environment. And I'll share this with you. You know, we talk about the lack of technology. We could go back and we could recount stories, but I assure you that all of us on this call stayed up late nights putting together packages to overnight them via FedEx or UPS so that we could get them in and made sure that every I was dotted and T was crossed, because otherwise Rattfield would send it back or Ken Okamura would call us and say it's rejected. And I can tell you, you want to talk about learning how to put complete and comprehensive packages together, you learned at the Money Store. Otherwise, you weren't going to be successful.
That's right.
And it was just because of so many things, you look back and, you know, Ray, you asked the question whether it was the good old days. I tell you what, in many ways it was, because learning that way rather than, obviously the industry's changed and exploded since then. But back then, I think you really learned the how of how to do it. And I think for many of us, it made us better lenders. Whereas today, you know, the market is so incredibly educated. So back then, we were the ones providing all of the information and educating. Where before, now we have borrowers come to us with the deal already structured and know the SOPs sometimes as well as we do because they've done the research. So it's a different skill set that's required today than it was back then. And, you know, all I can say is that, you know, some of these guys, Ray, you know, you and some of your other associates out there doing $50, $100 million a year in volume. Could you imagine trying to do that with a 750 loan cap?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was looking at the rankings and it seemed like a lot of the people that were at the top of the list at Money Store were doing about 40 units a year to get to 15 to 20 million.
Yeah,
Probably about right.
Remarkable.
Yep.
If you were closing one every couple of weeks or one a week, I mean, you were crushing it. You were really, really busy.
Guys, we're running tight, so I'm gonna let Mark go here.
Mark,
thank you so much for stopping in, man. Congrats on all your success.
No, my pleasure. It's so good to see all these old familiar faces. And you guys all look good. John, Vince, Sam, Joe. You all need to visit me in San Francisco. I took Sam on a tour of San Francisco in 2002. I remember.
I did.
It was a great time.
It was a great time.
Yeah.
That Korea
real reunion. Let's have a physical reunion.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I've heard something about the Purple Palace. Is that a thing?
That was the ziggurat, right? That was the corporate headquarters.
Yeah, that's the pyramid.
Who wants to take this one? What do y'all want to take this one? I'm happy to, but
Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
okay. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, Mark was such a neat guy, and Turtletaub, he was into a lot of numerology and into a lot of back then a lot of the feng shui and into he was very intentional about the design. And so what they wanted to do when it was time for the money store to relocate the headquarters there, they bought a piece of property on the river in Sacramento, and they built a ziggurat, which is a stepped pyramid for those that don't know what a ziggurat is. And Mark was very into numerology, so his office was on the 8th floor, and I think I can't remember whether you had to face west or faced east, but we had this amazing waterfall that came from the very top floor all the way down to the lower floor with these large koi fish that were swimming in there. And Mark's office was, in addition to the feng shui and the positioning, but also everything was purple, whether it was for royalty or whatever reason. But yes, we called it the Purple Palace because of Mark's office, not only his positioning, but also where it was located in the waterfall that flowed from the executive offices all the way down. Yes, that's a true story.
Amazing
Spectacular
memory.
building.
Can you guys share any other stories or memories from around that time? I mean, I know you guys had national meetings and stuff like that. I'm sure some fun stuff went down at those meetings. Anything we can share?
Probably not.
Probably not.
What about that Godfather spoof?
One thing you got to remember one thing you got to know about Turtletaub was that when you add in what John said about his positioning, the building, the ziggurat and all that, later on in the career, Mark would go on to actually be a movie director and producer. And he directed and produced some very notable films in the 2000s. They were pretty big hits. So when you combine his theatrics, if you go back and look at what he did and what he kind of pushed forward on the money store, and you see where he ended up in theater, directing and producing, it makes sense that he would go in that direction, right?
Well, and of course, Sam did the day in the life of a BDO video.
That was a great one.
No one's seen that one yet. I mean, that one we got to publish, and
when it drops from the ceiling.
It's like a 3 or 4 minute video. Did you record that on like a camcorder?
So it's funny. Yeah, I was in an executive suite. That's where we were at the time.
Right.
And Dave White, who has now since passed, as we all know, unfortunately, last year. And Dave was just a good friend, a good guy. And he calls me, and we're having a regional national meeting, and he says, we're all going to be in Sacramento, and he assigned me, he says, I want you to really put some thought into what it's like to be a BDO. Because people out here don't really know what it's like out there. And I'm thinking, I'm not really good at like putting together I'm just not good at that kind of stuff. And I said, everybody thinks that we do nothing but sit, collect checks, and cash them. Because the fade in and fade out, I remember now, because as watching it, I'm thinking that it was messed up, over time. But that was intentional. The fade in and fade out and those over quarters, that's what you had. I don't know if you remember this or not. You other guys, Ray, you may not know it, but you could fade in and fade out. And so, yes, it was done with like a little hand recorder, and I had one of the girls in the office suite put it together. But when Dave did it, I was like, I'm not going to do this on a serious matter. I want to do something that's kind of a little more playful. And I never will forget, we were all in the room, and it was for our regional meeting. It ultimately went to everybody, but it was for our regional meeting. And I got up in the front, and kind of did, the little stuffy, this is what Dave's asked me to do, and I'm going to get it together here. And all of a sudden, and everybody's in there like, oh, geez, here goes another one. And I started playing, and I just remember just everybody just dying laughing at the time. And I'm like, anyway, it was totally unexpected.
We're going to release that, and we'll link it here in the show notes as well.
Cool.
We're talking about the legacy of the money store. I think a lot of the legacy is the mentoring and the learning that we learned that we have passed on to like other people. And I've seen so many people that I used to talk to, and now all of a sudden they're running SBA departments themselves. But early in my career, my sales manager, Bob Wagner, who also has since passed, I was struggling after my first year. Like John said, it's not easy to get established. You're trying to scratch and claw, and you don't have a branch in every corner. You have no branches, right? And so I was really struggling, and I was sending a bunch of stuff up to Sacramento, and they were just laughing at it. It didn't fit, right? And so my sales manager, Bob Wagner, he came into town, and Bob was kind of just a cool character, just very calm, no panic in him. And he just came up to me very calmly, said, "Hey, Vince," he goes, "You're doing good. You're doing good." He goes, think of the money store like a bakery, and all we make are chocolate chip cookies, and we make the best damn cookies there are, but that's all we make. And he goes, what you're doing is you're bringing in pies and cakes, and they're good pies and they're good cakes, but we don't sell pies and cakes. We sell chocolate chip cookies. And he goes, learn how to make the cookie. And then it was like a moment. It was kind of like an aha moment, which it was a very simple lesson, but it was really about going to the basics, learning the SOP, learning what the credit box was for the money store, and then applying that. And then being able to, when you get a phone call and it looks like a deal that you can maybe make a commission on, but you really can't, you need to tell those people no as soon as possible. And
Right.
it was a great early lesson. And I have shared that story a million times with people. And I have people now coming up to me saying, "I remember the cookie story." Well, it's because of Bob, and it's basically, I kind of feel like in our industry, we do that, right? I think a lot of the people in the money store, and I'm gonna tip my cap to Heller people too. They're great, awesome people too. And I think that was the generation that hopefully, Ray, that you learned from us.
Yeah.
And then, it's up to you, and you're doing a great job
Yeah.
doing that with your show. It's just to keep teaching the next generation.
I've got a similar one I'd like to share about Dave White. And again, Dave was he became a good friend. Not only was he our manager at the time, but he was just a good friend. And I never will forget. This was probably a year or two after I'd been there, maybe, or whatever. And I had this deal, and we got it approved, and it was for a Lazy Boy store in South Alabama. And it was, at the time, it was a big deal. It was $1.5 million, right? And they wound up going to what was then South Trust Bank. Ironically enough, that's who Wachovia bought, down the road. But anyway, long story short, I'm calling Dave and I'm crying because I've just lost this $1.5 million deal, and I'm kind of upset about it. And typical Dave fashion, his response to me is not, "Man, I'm really sorry." His response is, "Sam, if you had a bigger pipeline, it wouldn't hurt so bad." And it's true. So
it is. And Ray, I tell you, or Sam, it's funny because I was actually going to share, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of the same story. So my regional sales manager, before I stepped in his shoes, was a guy by the name of Jim Bamel. And if you all remember Bamel, he ended up when Wodarski retired and Lilikoff stepped in as president, Jim stepped up as the number 2, and he was EVP, and then I stepped into his role, and that was in 96, 97. I'll never forget Jim, and I use this today. I mean, Jim taught me 2 things. Number 1, don't get emotionally hung up on a deal, and believe that we live in a world of abundance and opportunity. You are the person who controls how successful you're going to be. So if you think that the market isn't good enough for you to go and not robust enough, go create the market. And so a lot of it was, Ray, I think that speaks to, really bold leadership and appropriate management, but also sales-driven strategy. I mean, the money store was a sales organization. Yes, at times we all had to adhere to the credit parameters and to the Mark Rattfield, the gatekeepers, and making sure we did complete packages. But it was very clear we wanted to retain that number 1 SBA lender position, and we were a volume-driven shop. And
speaking of that number 1 position, I'm going to pull up some old rankings that you guys sent me here. So these are some of the rankings. You guys see that?
Yep.
So that's 97, 96, 95, and 94. Money Store obviously at the top of the list. AT&T Capital was right behind you. GE was up there in 94. I guess GE fell off a little bit in 95. Heller came out strong in 97. But it was Money Store at the top of the list for 16 straight years starting in the 80s, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing.
Ray, can I add something to why that may have been? There was a movie out called On Any Given Sunday. And Al Pacino was talking to Jamie Foxx, the quarterback, before their big Super Bowl game. And he was talking to him about, he ran into a quarterback he hadn't seen in a while. And they talked about what he missed the most. and this is going to be the frame of reference. He said it wasn't the Super Bowl rings and it wasn't all the excitement and fun things they did as players. What he missed was 11 men looking downfield, all with the same idea, all with the same vision. How that relates to what we're doing at the money store, we were a team of 100 BDOs, but we all saw it the same way. We all were looking downfield with the same purpose, the same objective, the same idea. That's part of what we're missing in today's environment. There's a lot of renegades out there, but there's not a lot of that synergy that a team has, looking downfield, all with the same idea. Just a thought for you.
And how much did those national meetings help bring everyone together?
Oh, a ton. I think, Ray, in terms of bringing everybody together, that was, literally we were together, of course. But I think today I look around the industry and I see how many people, as you guys have already referenced here, that are in our industry that are lineage money store folks. And some of those people, lots of those people, I still do keep in contact with and keep as a, I don't want to say I see them often, but we talk fairly regular. So, I think it means a lot.
Yeah, as you look out and you look at all these shops out in the market that are using this playbook that the money store helped pioneer, what do you think? What are the thoughts that go through your head?
Boot camp works. You ask any one of us and anyone that's been through it, you take a bunch of people, you put them in a room and you teach them the business, and you start out from this is A, this is B, this is C. But then after that, you have a good sales manager, might think of that as your field commander, and she guides you through that process. The old school way of teaching the business worked, and you carried that forward, and it made you a good BDO, and it kept you motivated and it kept you focused. And like John said, there's always opportunity. You just got to go find it, right? That's Bamel said. You got to go find that opportunity. We don't have that as much anymore. I don't see that in the marketplace. The old way of teaching people the right way.
I think also one of the things I see different, and this may just be me as a nearly 65-year-old speaking out of term, but to me, one of the things that we did very well early on, all of us, you had your own market. It was your business in your market, okay? And you developed that market locally. You knew the players in town, you knew the people, the banks, the CPAs, the brokers, all of that. And it seems to me today to get to the numbers, and I'm not disrespecting anyone that can do $50 or $60 million. Trust me, that's it's great. But to me, it's taking a much bigger splash nationally to get to those numbers than really developing the relationships that I think we all of us on this phone call, and really all of our colleagues through the years really do appreciate and love the fact that we can develop those and have those relationships. So,
and I think what we're all saying is this, and Ray, because I think one of the things that listen to your show, you kind of talk about the current sales environment and how you think compared to the way it used to be. I'll say this, that we're still in a relationship business. The difference is this. Is back in the 90s and even into the early 2000s, it really was about you were providing exceptional consultative input to real estate brokers, CPAs, their customers, helping them maximize cash flow, enhance return on equity, et cetera, and really helping them drive their business. And at the end of the day, you would go to a celebratory dinner. You weren't expected to pay a referral fee. It was like, thank you so much for helping my customer because you helped make me look better. And here's another deal for you. Today, there's still an opportunity to provide incredibly in-depth consultative input. But the market's different because there's 3 or 4 other guys that are out there willing to do the same thing or thinking that they can provide the same input and offering to pay that referral source a significant amount of money. So oftentimes, instead of it's like, hey, I've heard you're really great at consulting in the SBA space, so many of the first questions you get from referral sources are, I hear you're in the SBA business and, I understand you pay referral fees. How much is your referral fee? And I think that, that has been something that has changed in the marketplace significantly, and even more so really over the last 5 to 7 years. And so what I'll say is, in many ways, where I was really going with this is, in many ways, I think that what Money Store did so exceptionally well is they taught you the practice of SBA lending. They taught you the art of SBA lending. And I think that that art and that practice, if you will, in some ways is a little bit lost because of what I mentioned earlier, because so much of the market today is driven by price and a very, very educated marketplace.
That's perfectly said. And it's a good argument too to do something with the referral fees. I mean, if we can get back to those Money Store days, I'm willing to go through some pretty great lengths.
Yeah.
Because it sounds awesome. You guys make it sound awesome. Vince, I want to go to you with any final thoughts that you have before we wrap this thing up.
You know, a lot's changed over the years, and when we got into it, there weren't a lot of banks that really thought this was a great program. And I think to what we were just talking about is that now everybody offers an SBA product. So in a lot of respects, the marketplace treats it like a commodity and doesn't respect the service element that John was sort of highlighting. And so then it becomes all about whether it's a referral fee or who has the lowest pricing. And you have banks who have BDOs, potentially they're just order takers. They're not having to hustle so they're not having to do the things that we had to do just to fight and claw to get a deal. And I'm not saying all SBA shops are like that, but there are a lot of shops where it's just a lot of internal, referrals, which is fine. And that's a good, and I'm glad those customers are getting that product. But I think that hunger that we all had as BDOs, because we had no choice. To survive, we had to go find the deals. And so that enthusiasm for the product and the industry, it's crazy, but like the Heller people, some of those guys are like great friends of mine. I mean, we were competitors, but we would run into each other. And now I'm at a CDC. I'm going to plug the 504 product. We'll have a second, but I've got friends.
We're going to cut that out.
Oh, please leave it in. But I got friends who work at Harvest, right? And they used to work. They were like either they worked with me or were competitors with me. And it's now, but we all grew up at the same time as BDOs, and so we get each other, and we appreciate that business development ethic that I think we all had. And I think when you talk to a customer, or in my case, when I'm talking to a banker, when they see that, people sense when you have a passion for what you do. And I think all of us have a passion, and that's why they picked us. I mean, honestly, I think what happened was when they were recruiting, they were looking for people who had passion and who were smart, who could figure out the SBA product and who understood credit. And that's the other thing too, understanding credit. That's such an important aspect to do in this job, just to pre-screen deals so that you're not wasting a lot of time. And so things have changed. But this industry has always changed. There's always been change, and it survives and it moves on, and it will continue to survive, in my opinion.
Continues to
Yes.
evolve.
Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this legendary episode. I'm so grateful. I'm gonna go live here after this episode comes out, and I'm gonna go through a lot of the memorabilia you guys sent me. And I'm going to invite everyone in. If you were part of the Money Store, come on in. If you weren't and you just heard about it, let's, come in, interact with us. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to invite these guys. They're welcome to come. And we're going to look at some cool old relics. And just want to get this stuff out there. I'm so grateful you guys saved it. It's amazing.
Wow.
So thank you.
All right, that's it for this week's episode. If you want more SBA content, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and check out our sister shows, SBA Today and The BDO Show. We'll leave a link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of the Art of SBA Lending. Ta-ta.